Now, days after South Africa hosted the 15th BRICS Summit, there's still a lot of talk about what some called the apparent shift in geopolitics, or at least the beginning of it. The bloc, according to the Chair President Cyril Ramaphosa, handled the Russia-Ukraine war impartially. At the same time, as more countries have now joined the bloc, some are calling for the continent to avoid being aligned. But how possible is this, given some of the dynamics at play in some of the countries? Let's now have this conversation and speak to Professor Bhaso Ndzendze, who is Associate Professor and HOD of Politics and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg. Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening. You're right, and when one reads, you make a compelling case about how Africa can gain more by being neutral than picking sides. How so?
No, thank you very much for having me for this discussion. I think it's about putting trade first. I think the continent is best served when it trades with everyone. There's a lot of pressure currently to pick sides, and the impetus for this is the Russia-Ukraine war. And yet the European countries continue to do, in many instances, as much, if not more, trade with Russia than they did before the war started. Some 19 European countries, in fact, are breaking records in terms of their trade with Russia than they did before February 2022. And so the continent is best served when it trades openly with everyone and conducts business openly with everyone. This is the case that I put forward in the article, that the continent did not start the conflict. It has no means with which to alone, at least, bring the conflict to an end. And it is a developing continent that is best served when it conducts trade openly with every nation.
And I wonder, though, do you think that, the continent will be able to ward off the pressure and not succumb to it, given how loud, those who are trying to put the continent under pressure are becoming, because they're getting louder and louder, and some are getting on the charm offensive? I wonder if we'll be able to not succumb?
Well, I think the mere fact that there is pressure to pick sides is more of a reason to actually dig your heels in and to be autonomous and to be sovereign. The continent can absolutely afford to be neutral. It can afford to stave off the pressure, partly because the shift in global politics that we see is an outcome of the decline of the West and of the US in particular since 2009, since the Great Recession. And so what has been steadily happening is that the continent has been trading with more and more diverse partners, including China, including Russia, including countries in the Middle East, and increasingly, though not fast enough, with itself. And so it is able to stave off this pressure because it is not beholden to any single country. It is trading with everyone. It is trading more with itself and looking to enhance that trade. Of course, it's not that much, but the Continental Free Trade Area is intended to ensure that this becomes more and more the case. But the presence of China, the presence of Russia, and India and other countries is basically a leverage for the continent to basically be sovereign and to not go one way or the other, and to actually do what it deems best for itself. But of course, we are speaking about a lot of countries. Some may be more susceptible to pressure than others. But on the main, the bigger picture indicates to me that the continent can afford to be sovereign and can afford to not lean one way or the other. I think about 17.5% of its trade is with China.
Oh, no. It does look like the line to Prof there is, in fact, just suddenly got frozen, and I wonder if we do have him back. Prof, I hope you're back. Your line froze just at the moment. We were trying to listen to, some of what you're saying around this trade issue, but we heard what you said, and it'll be interesting to also see if South Africa continues to be viewed through the lens of its own foreign policy as non-aligned, because some are saying the non-alignment stance is also a stance. Others are saying that we seemingly are, taking sides, but it's an interesting conversation to have. But one of the things that, one also notes is that Africa has a young population, and when one thinks about the young people in this particular context, and I wonder, how do we begin to ensure that they are featured in these particular conversations, particularly when you think about future markets, sectors such as technology, as well as education, and we're talking about a skills divide at the moment in the digital era?
So that's a very important point that you bring. The picture is not too optimistic on the ground. Young people do continue to be excluded, and it is one of the great disappointments that, especially on education, so many of our young people are having to go and study abroad, and they don't find that level of opportunity and access to higher education in their home countries, and that creates then this brain drain, essentially, that we see. But a lot of the world population, especially among the developed countries, the populations are getting older and older, and there is increasing competition for African young people to essentially emigrate and to go and play a role in those countries to be productive, because even countries like China, actually, which is still a developing country, much of its population is older than it is younger. That's true across Europe as well. It's true in Japan and in a lot of other places. And so what the continent has to offer is a lot of young people, very innovative. And the question is, will this human potential be tapped by the continent itself or by other countries? And we're seeing a lot of countries indeed compete for this demographic.
And especially when you think about their presence at the polls, their presence in the places of work, and how important young people must be, as their voice in some of the tables of these important discussions. But let me thank you for your time, Prof. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much for this conversation. That is Professor Bhaso Ndzendze, who is Associate Professor and HOD of Politics and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg.